Hi folks, HR Funk here. As I record this video, it's just over a week before Thanksgiving Day of 2025, and as I'm thinking about the things that my family and I are going to be doing in the upcoming weeks with regard to the holidays, holiday shopping, all of the various festivities and things like that, one of the things that I always do is think about our safety concerns and how I'm going to address those concerns as we're going about attending to all these various things. And as I was considering all that, I thought maybe this would be a timely video so I could share my thoughts with all of you. And for those of you who do the same thing as I do, you can let me know your thoughts, as always. And we can share some ideas, and if there's something that you do that I think is a good idea, I'll incorporate it into my own safety plan. And hopefully I can pass on some of the things that I've learned during the course of my life that might be helpful for you. Now, in many respects, safety considerations around the holidays are the same as they are the rest of the year, but I can tell you from experience, with 3+ decades in law enforcement and also some private security experience mixed in there, that things get weird around the holidays. And virtually any law enforcement officer out there will tell you the exact same thing. And there's a lot that's driving that. There's a good bit of stress associated with the holidays. There's also some vulnerabilities around the holidays that aren't there, or at least aren't there as much the rest of the year. And because of all that, I started to think about the places that I saw most during the course of my career where these safety considerations were, in my estimation, at their highest. Now, I'm not going to be covering all the different possible ways that someone could be in peril during the course of the holidays. I'm not going to talk about air travel or anything like that. But I'm going to focus on the more common areas where I think there are safety concerns. And I've divided this into several areas, as I said, that were the ones that I was most frequently acquainted with during the course of my law enforcement career. So here we go. The first area of concern that comes to mind with respect to safety considerations during the holidays, in my estimation, should be the most obvious, but it might also be one that we think about the least. And those are safety concerns within our own home. And when we think about some of the things that happen during the holiday season, like packages being dropped off at our front door when we may or may not be home, or having that big window in the front of the house opened up so everyone can see our Christmas tree, but also anyone outside can see everything inside the home, the big stack of gifts and everything else. And when we think about the way some folks might celebrate by imbibing a bit too much of either alcohol or some other substance, there are just some different dynamics, as I mentioned before, that happen this time of year that are not quite so present the rest of the year. The first thing I want to say is if you have anything that seems suspicious, whether it's a noise, whether it's someone in your yard, whether it's someone at your front door or what have you, and you just aren't sure that this person has good intentions or that they are not up to no good, call the police. It's far better to have police officers come and investigate a suspicious circumstance and find out that it's nothing than it is to ignore that circumstance and have it end up being something. And there are many, many, many times as a police officer that I responded to calls where somebody got jittery over this or that thing that they saw or that they heard, and it turned out to be nothing. That's fine. No problem, no harm, no foul. It's much better, as I said, to do that than to have to call or have someone call on your behalf later on and find out that something that could have been avoided early on was not dealt with and it turned out to be a much different and much worse situation. By the way, quick note, the worst people on the planet when it comes to not calling the police when they should call the police are police officers' wives. Police officers will be out working an entire shift, responding to all kinds of different calls, all kinds of different places, helping people as best they can, trying to keep them safe, only to come home and have their spouse say, you know, a couple of hours ago, there was some guy at the back window with a baseball bat smashing out the glass and yelling, Satan is compelling me to destroy you, and reaching in and trying to unlock the window, but I didn't call dispatch because I wasn't sure that that was going to be anything and I didn't want to cause any problem or raise any alarm if it turned out to be nothing. And you're sitting there going, what? All right, maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much. But the message here is if you see anything, hear anything, or someone shows up on your property, and keep in mind, A lot of times this time of year, people are going door to door, either Christmas caroling or collecting for this needy group or that needy group or whatever, all of which is fine. But if someone shows up at your door looking like they slept under a bridge last night and their shirt has Red Cross written REDDCROS in Sharpie, you might not want to answer the door for that particular person. And again, if someone is there and doesn't leave, by all means call the police. The last safety consideration inside the home is one that I'm going to try to approach delicately. I have responded to many, many, many domestic disturbances associated with the holiday, especially on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Eve, Thanksgiving Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. I mentioned before there is a lot of stress surrounding this time of the year, and it's easy to get a little hot under the collar sometimes, and maybe you don't even intend to. If you find yourself going that way, try to disengage from the situation, take a walk, cool off, and try to approach things later on from a little bit better perspective rather than staying with the circumstance and having it go bad. One of the big ones, and this is something I cannot tell you how many times I was standing on a sidewalk in front of a house or on someone's front porch or in their living room, particularly on one of the eves, Thanksgiving Eve, Christmas Eve are the big two, where there are a separated or divorced couple. One of them is outside the home, the other one is inside the home. Somewhere between the two is a child, and there is a dispute over who is to have the child that evening and who is to have the child the next day. And they're trying to argue that point literally at the last minute. I can't speak for police officers in every state because I don't know the authority for police officers in every state. In Ohio, police officers have very little authority when it comes to deciding what children are going to go where for a holiday or what have you based on separation papers, divorce papers, or what have you. Those things have to be determined by the court, and they have to be determined well ahead of time. Don't wait until Christmas Eve to get a hold of an attorney and say, hey, I want to have my child, or I'm supposed to have my child, and my ex-wife says you're not going to get the child, or what. That all has to be decided months before that. It takes a long time to file things with courts and sometimes get things in front of a judge and get a ruling from a judge. And again, you don't want to put your children through that. You want them to look back on the holidays in later years as something that was a happy time, a joyous time that they were able to share with their parents. Sometimes that might mean you get the short end of a particular stick. That doesn't mean there's not something you can do later on through the courts. You need to contact your attorney to get advice on those type of things. But again, that's not what you want to do on a holiday or on a holiday eve. And as someone who, in an instant where I actually had to do this, who has had to pull a crying, screaming child from one parent's arms to hand that child to another parent that they don't want to be with, I can tell you that is a horrific thing for a child to experience, and it's not a whole heck of a lot better for the police officers that are in that position. So again, if you have circumstances like that, deal with that long, long, long before the holidays. Do not put your children through that, please. Now let's move on to safety concerns outside the home. And this could be on a sidewalk, walking down the street, in a parking lot, or what have you. And again, this time of year, we have a lot of things that we're dealing with. There are a lot of thieves out there just waiting for someone to walk away from a vehicle that has gifts stacked up inside that are in plain sight, or panhandlers that might be coming up to you asking for a handout, or thieves that might be coming up, or armed robbers, or what have you. My best recommendation for this is to maintain your situational awareness. You need to be aware of what's going on around you, who is around you, what those people are doing. If you see something that doesn't look right, avoid that circumstance or those individuals. It's not going to reflect badly on you if you cross the street or go a couple of blocks down the street or whatever to avoid an individual or a group of individuals that just don't seem right to you. If you have someone approaching you and you don't like their looks and you can safely leave that area, do so. If you can get to another area where there are a lot more people, get to that area. But again, this, along with just avoiding places that you already know are a bad idea to be. Bars, ATMs late at night, liquor establishments late at night. My wife has a saying that nothing good happens after 2 a.m. and she's got a point there. Don't tell her I said that. But no, just avoid all the known high crime areas, anything like that. Avoidance is always your best safety measure. If you can avoid being in a dangerous circumstance, then do so, and you're going to be much better off for it. Religious services are another instance where there are some safety considerations this time of year where if you go to church, or depending upon what your faith is, you go to whatever your place of worship is, the doors are open. Everyone wants to invite the community in to help celebrate the holidays and all of that type of thing. That's fantastic, but it also literally opens the door for anyone who might have ill intentions for the people who are inside that place of worship. And this could be mentally deranged people. It could be anti-religious zealots. You know, how many times have we seen in recent history where someone has walked into a church, walked into a synagogue, or what have you, and started to take hostile actions toward the persons inside of there. Once again, I think the best course of action is as soon as you get the inkling that something might not be right, call the police and have them talk to this person. Yes, it might look like your place of worship is not inviting. It might not give everyone a warm, fuzzy feeling to have a uniformed police officer come in to start to talk to the person who is sitting in the front row, talking to people beside them who aren't really there and saying things like, you know, I need to stop these people before they, I don't know, inhibit the Martians that are coming to land or something like that. You want to get that law enforcement intervention as soon as possible to hopefully avoid any sort of worse circumstances in the very near future. If your church or your place of worship has a security team, that's fantastic. I would say, how do I want to say this? Whoever is responsible for selecting members of the security team, please take that responsibility seriously. I guess that's as much as I'll say along that line. Also, be observant for anything that is just out of place. When I was working armed security up in the Cleveland area, we had a large gathering of people. It was an outdoor festival. There were a lot of different vendors there. And as I was walking through on patrol, I happened to look down next to one of the tents that was there, and there was a backpack just laying there. It was out of place. I asked, does anyone know who this belongs to? Nobody knew who the backpack belonged to. And it didn't seem right to me. We had a bomb-sniffing dog that was in the area. We got a hold of that officer. He brought the dog by. Dog sniffed the package, did not alert on it. We opened it up, and it turned out to be just a backpack with some belongings inside. I don't even remember what they were, just personal belongings of some sort. So all's well that ended well, but that could just as easily have been something that was left by an individual with hostile intentions for the group that were at the festival. So if you see something like that, odd things, and there is a book called Left of Bang that if you are someone who is security or safety minded, I would highly recommend it. It talks about evaluating your area and looking for things that don't fit the norm, things that are out of place essentially, and then zeroing in on that to try to determine whether or not that is a real threat or not a real threat. And again, it is something that I think that book helps with, and again, I would recommend it if you have any interest in this topic whatsoever. I was going to break this next category up into two different items, but I think I'm going to combine it all instead. And what I'm going to be talking about are shopping centers, malls, events like parades, festivals, etc., anywhere where there are large gatherings of people. And this can involve everything that I've already discussed with regard to mentally unstable people. There could be intoxicated people, there could be thieves, there could be robbers, essentially all the bad type elements that I've already mentioned. But we see time and again when this time of year rolls around, especially over the last decade or two, where there is some tragedy and it's a mass casualty event that is affected on the people who are attending those things. And this is another place where I cannot emphasize enough to maintain your situational awareness. Constantly look for what's going on around you, look at the people around you, keep an eye out for those things that I mentioned that are just out of place, whether it's an object like a backpack or a vehicle or an individual who just seems to be loitering for no real reason whatsoever. If you're in a warm climate, someone who's dressed very, very warmly in heavy clothing that can potentially conceal a lot of things that might be of concern. If you are anywhere where something just doesn't look right, please notify any law enforcement or security people who are in the area to this potential threat. Have them evaluate that and determine, once again, whether or not this is a real threat or not. Sometimes just someone being very, very aware and alerting the authorities, the proper authorities that is, to a potential threat is enough to prevent someone who might be considering an act from taking that act, because they realize the people there are aware of what's going on, they are tuned in, and they are moving to those areas of concern very, very quickly. Again, from my own experience, we had a circumstance involving a religious gathering. Again, this is when I was working private security. And there was an individual who made national and I think international headlines by carrying out an active threat at a location in a neighboring state, not very far from where we were. And when the FBI was evaluating this individual's computer records, they found that this individual was looking at some of the areas where I was working and my fellow officers, security officers were working in the area where we had these religious functions going on. And I think possibly due to the fact that we were a very visible presence in those areas and we were very vigilant, this individual decided to avoid where we were and carry out his evil plan in another location. Now, that does not at all excuse what he did in the other location, but at least maybe through the things we were doing, we prevented it from happening where we were. The final thing that I would mention is whenever you are going about your routine, either in your home, out of your home, at some sort of an event or festivity or whatever, have whatever reasonable and legal means are available to you to keep yourself and your family members safe. And I want to stress reasonable and legal. Nothing in this video should be construed as me saying that anyone should violate the law at any level, either local, state, or federal. In any case, that's my video on safety considerations for the holiday season. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments about this video, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, stop by my website, hrfunk.com, check out the news and information page, see all the latest things going on with me and the channel, and go by the products page, because a lot of the products I've reviewed have links on that page, and there's information beneath some of those links that'll save you some money if you decide to make a purchase. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.